In those moments suspended between sky and war, even in such numbers and mixed in with the courage, there would have been moments of private anguish and countless lumps in the throat. So imagine taking the same leap days, even months earlier, with just one or two others behind enemy lines. Sonya d'Artois jumped 2 weeks after her 20th birthday, 9 days before D-Day. British, but raised partly in France, she was fluent in French. She would also later become Canadian, but first came the riskiest assignment of her life. She spoke about it for a documentary back in 2002.
We always did hear the rumors. So-and-so jumped in 2 days ago and he was shot upon landing. And we'd hear it. We weren't supposed to, but we would.
Her code name was Agent Blanche. Once she landed in German-occupied France, her identity was Suzanne Bonvie. But she was a British agent, a courier, and an explosives expert. Her main task? To quietly help the French resistance to sabotage German efforts.
This was the job that we were there to do. You just did the best you could. The reason for it was to harass the Germans and try and break up their lines of communication and their troop movements and just obstruct them as much as possible.
She was one of the youngest of some 3,000 exceptional women who became agents of the Special Operations Executive, only later memorialized, though they were integral to the Allied plan to win Europe's gravest war. The SOE was Winston Churchill's idea, meant to, quote, set Europe ablaze. And by 1944, thousands of agents were helping the resistance inside enemy territory. Headquarters in plain sight at Baker Street in the heart of London. Among its recruits, it soon became clear women were best suited for the task.
Women could travel more freely, and they could be couriers, they could be radio officers, or indeed weapons officers, and this is what they did, and they were very courageous, but they could travel more easily in occupied France than men.
Their exploits depicted in a 1947 film starring a real-life SOE agent, Jacqueline Nairn. It gives some sense of what Sonya d'Artois went through to prepare.
She learned how to handle explosives. She learned how to make bombs. She learned how to blow up bridges. She learned how to do silent killing. She did 4 practice jumps, and then the final one was the parachuting into France.
75 years after she made that jump also marks 75 years since her wedding to one Guy d'Artois, a French-Canadian member of the SOE, whom she married just before they were deployed to France.
She was a rabble-rouser.
They were Nadia Murdoch's parents.
This is the scarf that he wore.
Her father, a war hero in his own right. Their superiors were concerned they'd give up secrets if they were captured and tortured in front of each other.
So they were supposed to go on a mission together, and because they got married, they split them up. And my father was sent to one area of France and my mother a completely different area.
They each did their part, and then D-Day came. And with the parachutes raining down on Normandy, they were no longer alone.
Because we knew that the Allies had landed, we had a lot more confidence to do what we had to do. It was open warfare, and we managed to do quite a lot of damage.
Never before had so many women been, so closely involved in one of the great operations of a major war, and their support for the D-Day landings in advance of them and after them was enormous.
d'Artois was lucky to avoid capture, but she almost had her head shaved to mark her as a collaborator. She was saved by colleagues who vouched for her. After the war, she moved to Canada with her husband, raised a family, preferring to stay out of the limelight.
I've never seen it.
That was taken right after.
Yet 75 years later, back in France, she is front and center.
The devil may hair streak in her veins.
That secret life now shared with all those who've come to remember. To see all this now, for her daughter, just overwhelming.
It's very moving, it's very touching, and it's, we all feel so much pride, and it's emotional. It's a big moment for all of us. Yeah.
Sonya d'Artois, the daring, gutsy agent that her family only knew as a loving mother and grandmother.
Very humble and just soft and gentle. And I think that's really beautiful to be able to be both, to be very strong and very brave. But I think the most brave thing is to be able to be gentle and soft.
I do think it's important to make the journey and to respect the past and the sacrifices of the past.
On the beaches where all those young men landed in her footsteps, her memory lives on. Nalayed, CBC News, Normandy, France.